Hey guys and girls, Board now back with you. On this video I will be talking about episode 4 of Dopesick, the miniseries, the limited series, and episode 4 is called Pseudo-Addiction. And the pseudo-addiction of the title is this idea which they introduce in the episode where the people who are trying to work for the drug agency and promoting the drug, and this is in response to obviously the addiction and the side effects and some of the horror stories which are starting to come out about people who've got hooked on the drug and the way it's sort of ruined their lives. So in response to this, they try to come up with this idea of pseudo addiction, where the addiction, according to this theory, according to what they're trying to promote, is just in the user's head. So then the addiction isn't real and it's not really having this negative effect. And it's sort of this kind of very like corporate, very sort of political sort of way of just like passing the blame onto the people taking the drug and saying, really, there's nothing to worry about. There's nothing. It's just in your head. So it's just a way of like passing the blame, and they start sort of promoting this. Now, this is quite a heavy episode, and it's a heavy episode because we actually start seeing some dark stuff. We actually start seeing how it's torn apart people's lives. So we see that with the Michael Keaton Dr. Samuel, because at one point he just snaps on it's Billy when he comes to see him, and at this point they haven't had contact in months, and at first Samuel doesn't want to see Billy, but Billy sort of talks his way in, and but really what the scene is all about is that Samuel wants to give Billy a piece of his mind, because obviously in the last episode he ended up in hospital and they sort of pushed all these drugs on him, but what they did is they were obviously like upping the dosage. They were trying to give more than you would naturally have. And what we find out in this episode is that then Samuel has become addicted himself. We see him with all these drugs in the drawer, and it's one of those things which I guess it's just a simple sort of way to show addiction, but to some extent it's true. Then even though you know this is no good for you and it's wrecked your life, and you still sort of have the drugs there, and the temptation is still there to take them. You are kind of hooked on them, and it's sort of just taking control of your life and everything. So the purpose of that scene is to show that he's kind of seen through Billy's bullshit at this point, and he's sort of gotten to a certain point where he no longer believes this guy, and he just wants done with him. So he actually like beats the crap out of him and like chucks him out of like his offices. And obviously I think with Billy there is meant to be some sort of conscience. I think he is someone who's been like seduced into this world and obviously pressured to be like a salesman, but there are certain moments where he takes a step back and just says, well, that's not quite right, or at least questions something, and so far he hasn't like gone the full hug and resisted completely. But it's I think from Billy's point of view it's actually a tough scene, because I think we are meant to think then, although he's been doing his job and he's been obviously pushing this stuff on, then maybe he does have some sort of like actual genuine like bond with the Keaton character. So that's the scene, and we see the Keating character get more and more down the path, more and more like addicted, and we see what it's done to his life, that it's made him really miserable. I think probably the weakest part of this show, or what it doesn't do enough, is it doesn't have the more dramatic visual moments enough, like the moments of poetry where it goes a bit beyond just being a dry kind of heavy hitting, sort of thriller type show where it's obviously dealing with these like realistic type things. But one example we do get, which is an effective end to the episode, is that Samuel actually starts seeing, like, there's a nice little scene at the end of the episode where Samuel puts on a song which provokes memories of his wife. It's a song which they obviously shared together, and we get like a visual of him like dancing with his wife, who's obviously no longer around. We've seen him like crave female companionship because of the woman who they used to kind of butter him up as part of the whole set. We see in this episode that she's kind of, I think just because of how extreme his addiction has got, she's kind of shoved him to the side and doesn't want to have contact with him anymore. And so we see obviously Samuel misses female companionship, and that sort of leads to the end scene, which is really beautiful. I think we could do with a bit more of those to kind of give you something a bit more, and a bit more lift, or a bit more of I don't know, just something which grabs you a bit more. But this episode does go into the addiction a bit more. The effects it has on Betsy, we see, because you get like a few years where it's jumped forward and Betsy is no longer with Grace, and she is now working with a drug dealer. And at one point he's like suggesting then they go to Florida, because apparently that's an area where they would maybe have more success or pushing these drugs. And it's this whole thing where it's a really sort of nasty type relationship where they sort of rely on each other, and he's getting like really aggressive with her when she doesn't like bring him the drugs, even though he's the dealer, as she reminds him. And so there's sort of stuff going on like that where Betsy has like lost control of her life really, and has spiraled into like a darker path. But we do see Grace in this episode. We see a scene where they sort of bump into each other at a gas station, and it turns out then Grace has heard about what's been happening in Betsy's life, so she like talks, sort of like springs like an AA style meeting on the, like she contacts these people and then brings them over to her house, and they sort of spring it on her as a way to try and make her confront the situation. And there's been like a change of heart from her parents as well, where the parents are now more supportive, and or it's just they're concerned about her health and what she's doing. And it's like, obviously you've had the issues with the father especially not accepting her sexuality, but it's like they just want to be there for her at this point. The other stuff doesn't matter. So she does go to like this AA meeting at one point, and I think again where sometimes this drama is taking liberties, and where it's just pushing certain things a little too much, where it's just a bit too contrived, is like a scene in this AA meeting where like after like the thing, Betsy goes into the bathroom, and this woman who's obviously an addict as well has been there. She approaches her, and she actually like gives her some drugs, like, and then she says to her, well, come back next week, I'll have some more. And I guess it's not unbelievable, because I'm sure that stuff goes on, and these are addicts after all. I guess it just felt a bit heavy-handed, and, hey, we're not going to let Betsy sort of fight her addiction that easily. We're going to have this woman push drugs off on her. But it's obviously showing this sort of vicious cycle and pattern that addicts can get into. So that's obviously a big theme of the episode. We obviously get more with like the attorneys and their investigation, and the big thing that happens with them in this episode is that they sort of, there's a lot of like digging and phoning people up, because they're trying to get hold of this article which was published like years ago, which the drug company have been citing as part of their promotion to say, yeah, the drug is actually okay and on the level. And it's this scientific type article where they're sort of using it to kind of say that, yeah, then they're not actually addicted, or addictive, I should say, or it's very small addiction. And the whole catch with the article is then it's a letter published in like a journal, like a science journal, and the letter is only like 2 or 3 lines long. It's not a very long letter, so it's almost like they've just taken a snapshot and probably taken like his intentions out of context sort of thing and twisted them, and they finally catch up with the guy who published it, and it comes out then he again sort of says, well, it was only a general sort of quote, I wasn't really saying in all cases, or just then he didn't quite mean it in that context, but also he was unaware that they'd taken it and used it as part of their promotion. This was news to him, so they get further sort of like evidence and further sort of ammunition that they can use against the company, but it's a bit of a slow process still, because there's a lot of politics going on where there's pressure on them to either like show their hand or show their case fully, or to like just drop it. And there's this sense that maybe some of the higher up don't want to, really go to town and mess with this powerful type of drug company. Now, the line of the episode and the line of the series so far is probably that. What is it? Let's slap the shit out of these motherfuckers, and that comes from Bridget, which is a glorious line. And that's because they're continuing like their sort of pressure on the company, and they're trying to impose restrictions in this episode, and you sort of get these amusing type scenes where they're in like a meeting and they're sort of giving, and it's not with the company, but it's with the people who would supposedly like sort of like have sort of mediate the company, so to speak, and are meant to like referee them, keep them in line and keep them legally above board, and how they sort of like treat themselves and promote themselves, things like that. And so Bridget tries to pressure them into like putting like these restrictions on, certain restrictions, ideas she comes up with, and at one point she says, well, if you don't impose them, I will. And it's just a funny little satirical scene because the guy just responds with, well, we'll take that under advisement. And there's a couple of moments like that when he just says the same line. So, and it's one of these funny lines that you can imagine this sort of like character, this sort of company coming out with, where they're being all very political and they don't really want to face up to it and actually do something, or if they do, they might do it slowly and they might go away and do it later, or it's a very slow sort of process once again. And so, but I absolutely love that line from Bridget, and yeah, Rosanna Doyle, Dawson, is one of the highlights of this series so far. I think she's great in that role. So that's episode 4. I won't actually be doing any more of these on this channel, and there's a couple of reasons. Firstly is that it's a really busy time at the moment, so I sort of feel that maybe I have to drop one thing. The other reason is, although I have been mostly liking it and enjoying it, well, enjoying might not be the word, but I've sort of been quite into it. I think it just feels like the sort of drama where as it goes on, maybe there's not that much to talk about. Like a lot of the episodes do sort of feel the same, and yeah, I'm not sure if overall over 8 episodes there's going to be that much to talk about. So I think that's another reason I might sort of like call it a day for the reviews. I'll definitely watch the rest of the show, 4 more episodes to go. I suppose I could always come back and comment on how it ends and stuff, but it's not necessarily a knock on the show. It's just maybe one of those sort of things where for whatever reason there's maybe not too much new to say, after you get past the first few episodes. So I think that'll do it for Dopesick. I've done half of it, and I'll definitely watch the rest of the show. But there you have it. That's episode 4 of Dopesick. So look out for more new TV reviews from me. I'm doing Dexter New Blood, the sort of comeback season of Dexter, and I've also been doing Wheel of Time, the Amazon show, and another thing is the Chucky TV show, so look out for reviews of those to come. But thanks for listening, and goodbye.